So a very big welcome to tonight's meeting at Denbigh Radio Club to Adrian KO8SCA Sierra Charlie Alpha, who is going to come and talk to us in specifically about the Market Reef DXpedition that he was on in 2021. I think I've got that right, Adrian. But also I'm sure he's going to give us a bit of a tale about what's involved in some of the DXpeditions and the work that goes into it, and so on. And he's also going to entice us to what we've been waiting for a long time, the Bouvet Island DXpedition. That I think the date of it's been changed, hasn't it, Adrian? It was going to be this year, but I think it's been put forward now to January 2023. Am I right?
That's correct. Actually, the date was set to exactly January 6, 2023, and I'll explain a bit later why that happened.
Okay, brilliant. So, Adrian, I did notice that on your qrz.com page, you're listing the various places you've operated from. One of them was one that club members here will know very well. You operated at PJ2T's site. Because we had Jeff, who was the kind of driving force, as you know, behind the station there on Curacao, and he ran a meeting for the club, which was probably one of the most spontaneous and fascinating meetings, because he literally walked around the operating position at PJ2T and around the location there and around and up the antennas. With his phone on the Zoom, and just talk to us about what was involved, and all of us will remember very clearly Jeff telling us about the work he has to do up those masts in cleaning up all the damage from the salt water and giving a good coat of protection to them. So, Adrian, we felt his pain. But we also felt your enjoyment as one of the operators there. So do mention PJ2T. So on that note, I'm going to hand the microphone over to Adrian and let you take it away, Adrian.
Okay, well, thanks for the introduction. Good evening, I guess, and good afternoon for everyone that's joined this meeting to hear my presentation about some of my adventures from last year and the upcoming ones. I will start the presentation, and afterwards I'll take questions, and we can talk about anything else, any other expeditions I had in the past few years. Let me share the screen. All right, can you guys see the presentation?
No, you must. I bet you've got multiple monitors. I can now. Yeah, got it now.
Okay. Well, so last year in 2022 in the summer, I was lucky enough to break the barriers of COVID, and with some invitation from my friends in Finland, I had some exciting time in the country of the happiest people, from what I've been told. And the United Nations has this designation for Finland. Quite a jolly place to be. So in June 2021, I started my journey in Finland with the expedition to Market Reef with a call sign Oscar Juliet 0 Charlie. It was quite a bit of an interesting time there. This little island is not too far away from civilization, and yet when you're there, you feel that you're far away from the inhabited world. Market Reef is an IOTA designated island with number EU 053. And okay. It's a tiny little spot in the middle of the Baltic Sea, and it's located between Sweden and Finland. Now, Market Reef is designated as a separate DX entity for ham radio operations. And the reason for that is because between Market Reef, which belongs to Finland, and the mainland Finland, there's another DX entity, which is the OH0, Åland Islands. And for that reason, Market Reef becomes a separate DXCC entity. Like I said, it's located in the Baltic Sea. It's very close to the polar circle, and that makes it a pretty cold place. During the summer, especially in June when I visited the island, the daylight is pretty long, almost 23 hours, so almost never got dark, which is quite interesting for someone living away from the polar circle. In the Book of Records is considered the smallest sea island shared by two countries. Although this island is so tiny, is actually half of it belongs to Sweden, half of it belongs to Finland, but only the Finnish side is a separate DX entity. The Swedish side, it just counts for Sweden. Considering the island is very small, that makes it quite an interesting fact for ham radio operations. For me to get there, it was basically a way to use almost all transportation means known to man. Basically, I took a flight from New York to Europe, and somewhere from Europe, from Holland, another flight to Helsinki. From Helsinki, I took a car to a large city in Turku, which is a big port. I think it's the second largest city in Finland. And from there, we drove the car into a big ferry boat, shown there, the top left. And that ferry boat took us to Åland Islands. On Åland Islands, we drove on the other side of the island, about a bit over an hour. And from there, we had the chartered boat to take us the next day to Market Reef. The boat ride, the chartered boat ride, is about an hour, maybe a little bit over an hour, depending on sea conditions and wind and so forth. And you can, of course, get into Market Reef by flying a helicopter. It will only take 15 minutes. Unfortunately, a lot more money. There's no airport or other way to get on the island except by boat. Even the so-called heliport is basically just a circle painted onto the rocks, shown there in the picture bottom left. This area where the island is located, it's quite a busy shipping lane. And as you see there, the picture in the middle, top middle, while sitting on the island and watching the horizon, you would see so many container ships. Sometimes it made me feel like I never left Manhattan. It was one big container ship after another. The island is really, really small, about 8 acres. It's uninhabited, very small elevation, only about 6 feet. And the border that designates which side belongs to Sweden and which side belongs to Finland was drawn in 1809. At that time, Finland was part of the Russian Empire. But the border was amended again in 1985. What happened is the island has a lighthouse on it, which was built because of the heavy ship traffic that's been going on for hundreds of years. And because the area is very rocky, a light was needed there so that it will show the path to the big ship to avoid the rocky area. So the lighthouse was constructed, but the lighthouse was located on the Swedish side, even though it belonged to Finland. So in 1985, some engineers probably figure out that the border had to be drawn again to keep the same size on both the Swedish and the Finnish rights, mostly because according to the marine laws, when you own an island, you also own a certain mileage of fishing rights, and also if there's any oil around, then that belongs to you as well. So the border was redrawn with that very weird zigzag shape that kind of makes it very confusing why such a tiny island needed such a eccentric borderline, and that's why it was done that way. The island, being only 6 feet above the ground, is very often washed by the waves of the Baltic Sea, and so the border cannot really be marked with anything on the island, any kind of marker. So the only way to do so, if you take a look at the picture top left, the border is actually marked with some drilled holes into the rock, and with paint is listed which side is Swedish and which side is Finnish. The Market Reef entity for ham operators is not very rare. It's located at position 112. Out of 340, it's not very rare, but not, not to the bottom of the list either. What happens that's very interesting is mostly for the 6-meter operators. And one of the reasons we actually visited the island in the summer, in the middle of the start of the 6-meter season, is because this island is very rare in North America, and especially in Asia and Japan on 6-meter. So our main focus on the island on the expedition was 6-meter operation. Market Reef was added as a new entity in 1969, and then the expedition organized at the end of that year, December, January, with the call sign Oscar Juliet 0 Mike Romeo, designated for the first time this island as a separate entity for the XCC list. In Swedish, the word market means boundary marker, and that basically says it all when it comes to why this island is called Market Reef. The island is just basically a big rock. It's if you don't look very closely, you won't see any vegetation or anything living on it. But the lighthouse, which is pictured there on to the right picture, the right building, was the first construction done on the island, and that's where the lighthouse keeper lived. And later on, two other buildings were added next to the lighthouse. So today there are 3 separate buildings on the island. I'm going to play a little movie video, hopefully. Okay. So if you take a look at this little video, you'll see a 360 degrees view of the island, and you can see there's basically nothing there, just a big rock, and very often is washed out by the sea. Because of that wall was built there to prevent the waves from crashing into the building. In the past, you see that little construction on the left used to be the so-called the throne or the toilet, but because of ecological reasons and because the water constantly washed the building, that was moved inside to one of the bigger buildings. While on the island, one of the team operators of the DXpedition made also a drone video of the island, and I'm going to play that in a few seconds as well to give you a better view from above of the size of the island and how the constructions the two building I constructed in the middle of the island. As you saw, there are a few water pools, leftover water from washing the waves, and quite a few birds. So if you don't look closely, you don't really see anything going on vegetation wise. But if you look closely, you can see there's some grass, some little flowers. It seems that life finds a way to thrive even in the most desolate places. One of the books I read about the Market Reef while on the island said that there are 23 different plant species on Market Reef. One of the volunteers on the island took some pictures of the island, and while doing so even found a little snake, which is quite interesting and raised questions of how that got onto the this barren rock. You can see a picture of it at the top left. Apart from the few plants, there were quite a few birds, a lot of birds. They seem to thrive a lot, especially because the island is not populated for more than maybe 3 months of the year during the summer. It is too cold during the winter for anyone to actually stay on the island. That makes it difficult because during the summer, um, it's impossible to do to operate in a 160-meter band because there's no darkness. And when there's darkness in that part of the world, the weather conditions and the temperatures are so low that makes it very difficult to actually get to the island. Now, the birds seem to be extremely aggressive. They're not that much used with humans, and of course, they're nesting birds are exactly in the area where is best suited for antenna installations. When we first landed on Market Reef, I was seeing the volunteers that were working on the lighthouse approaching us with some brooms and uh, construction type helmets. Initially, I thought this must be some kind of a weird Finnish customs that I don't know about. It turns out that the birds are so aggressive, and in the past there was an incident that one of the birds actually hit one of the volunteers and caused some bleeding in his head. And since then, the rule was enacted where when during the antenna installation, we all had to wear plastic protective helmets, and we had to do it in teams of 2 operators, and one of the operators will use a tall broom to shoo away the birds. Most of the aggressive birds, some kind of terns, they're mostly males which are protecting the nests where the females are laying their eggs, and there are quite a few of these nests behind the building. In 2008, restoration project started to restore the lighthouses in Finland, and one of the main projects was Market Reef Lighthouse. These volunteers go on the island for a week or 2 at a time. They pay for their own stay on the Market Reef, and while they're there, they maintain the lighthouse. Some light work like painting and cleaning and so forth. They also man the little museum that's there, and during the summer, they're organized the tours where tourists will come in for an hour or 2 using a charter boat, and they will take pictures, maybe have a lunch, buy some t-shirts or postcards or even stamps, and this helps raise some money for the budget of maintaining the lighthouse. To the left, the two pictures are showing some of the artifacts from the little museum in the lighthouse. These are basically items that were used or in use during the time when the lighthouse was manned by a lighthouse keeper. But after the lighthouse was computerized, there was no need for anyone to actually stay on the island for 12 months of the year. In the picture on the right is a moment, a snapshot taken during lunchtime. The volunteers will cook for us, and we had the chance to enjoy some of the Finnish delicatessen, mostly based on fresh potatoes and lots of different other meals or dishes. Unfortunately, hard to pronounce for me in Finnish. Everything on the island has to be brought in, from fuel, water, food. Obviously, there's nothing on the island, so the one of the sheds or storage places in one of the buildings is filled up with a lot of burning firewood, and because we had to be self-sustaining for the period of the 10 days where we had the expedition, we had to bring quite a few in addition to a lot of equipment. We also had to bring quite a bit of other items so that we don't depend on anyone on the island, even though the volunteers provided us with the food and water. You can see there at the picture at the top left, these are our bags when we first landed on the island. In the lighthouse, there's even a little kitchen that has all the amenities of a, let's say, of the civilized world. Even has a little fridge, and from what we're told from by the volunteers, that's the main item that consumes the electricity that it's available on the island. Market Reef won the designation as one of the windiest places in Finland. While I was there, the wind absolutely never stopped. On an average during the day, we had 10 to 12 meters per second, and the temperature of the air was just above the freezing point. So it's pretty cold, even though it was in the middle of the summer. Beginning with 1977, the lighthouse was automated, and the lighthouse keeper that used to live on in the lighthouse, Mr. Erickson, he has actually got his ham radio license in 1972, and for a few years, while before the lighthouse was automated, he was able to activate Market Reef with the call sign Oscar Juliet 0 Mike Alpha. And after he retired in 1977, he moved to Åland Islands, and there he continues to be active with the call sign Oscar Hotel 0 November Alpha. From what I was told recently, he is still alive and well, and he still enjoys ham radio from time to time. Market Reef is not too far from Europe, so because of that, a lot of Europeans tend to spend a few days DXing from the island. At this time, there are about 20 valid Market Reef licenses, OJ0 licenses. So it's pretty popular, but only for the summer months. Most of the operators that come on the island seem to be focusing on HF bands, and indeed the pileups are quite incredible. while operating from there. There are no showers or facilities to bath yourself. So while I was there, I was told to try one of the water pools that formed between the rocks on the island. And after being fooled once that that's the way to do it, I learned that there's a better way. And even from the first evening, I discovered one of the best known secrets of Finnish life, which is sauna. While traveling through Finland, I realized that absolutely everyone has a sauna in their homes. Even in the large cities, people living in apartment buildings, they still have a sauna in their apartment. So we took advantage of the sauna almost every evening. After enjoying the pile-ups all day, in the evening for half an hour to 45 minutes, a refreshing sauna is exactly what's needed to get back to the pile-ups and freshen your body and mind. The lighthouse was built in, or the accommodation that we had there were built in 1885, so they're quite old. But the sauna constructed there had everything. It was built in the Finnish tradition with coals and using sea salt water. So quite an enjoyment. I should say the highlight of the day. There are three buildings on the island. If you take a look at the bottom left, the building on the right is the lighthouse itself. At the first floor is a large living room, or the place where we had our meals. At the second floor were the accommodations of bunk type beds, as well as the museum that I was mentioning earlier. The middle building um, at the first floor is the so-called throne, is the bathroom, and the top floor is the room that houses the electrical generators. On top of the building, you will see the uh, foghorn structure, and this is what we used later on to install the 6-meter beam. The building on the left is a tool shed and also a storage facility, which had a lot of firewood. And after using the sauna, I realized what that firewood is for, considering that during the summer, there's no need to hit the rooms where we slept. The firewood are mostly used for the sauna. This is a picture of the generator room. That room has a few generators. Some of them are not functional anymore, but the main generator, it's a diesel generator, but it's being used very rarely. The onto the right side, you'll see it in that picture is a bank of batteries which store electricity produced by the solar panels and the wind turbine that's installed on one of the buildings. The volunteers on the island told us that those the electricity on those batteries never actually discharge. The only exception is when the ham operators visit the island, their amplifiers quickly discharge those batteries, and so sometimes the backup diesel generator is being used. We had two stations, two aircraft K3S radios and two expert amplifiers, 1.5 kilowatts models. We used one of the stations completely designated for the 6-meter band. If there was no propagation, we still transmitted just in case there's any opening going on. And the second station we used to enjoy pileups in the HF bands. The foghorn structure was the most important part of the building, at least from the point of view of the ham operators. We had our piece de resistance, which was a sixth element 6-meter yagi, which we brought to the island, and we left it there for the future, the expedition that were planned to be um, assembled for that summer. During the 6-meter season in 2021, I think, if I'm not mistaken, about 6 or 7 consecutive DXpeditions were arranged so that we would take advantage of the any possible opening of the 6-meter season. We used um, the WSJT software, but also the JTDX and MSHV. We did a lot of activity even on NSSB. Quite a few people were telling us that has been quite a few years, almost 30 years since propagation was so good, and they were able to do 6-meter SSB contacts, intercontinental QSOs. 6-meter band is called the magic band because when the band opens, it's really magic. When the band is closed, there's a totally frustrating exercise. You will just sit there and transmit for hours and hours and hours. And one of the main frustrating things about 6-meter is if you take a look at these propagation charts while we were there on Market Reef, you will see that propagation opens from North America to Europe and from Japan or Asia to Europe, and everybody's enjoying 6-meter QSOs, but that doesn't mean that the same propagation reaches Market Reef. Market Reef being so far north, it takes a while until propagation peaks that far north. And a lot of frustration. We would see comments on the cluster where are you guys? Why didn't you transmit? We're making QSOs all over the Europe and we can't hear you. Well, propagation rarely reached Market Reef, but when it did, it really brought quite a bit of joy for those DX stations. They really needed the Market Reef for a new one on 6 meters. For the lower bands, we had or the HF bands, we had a few sloper antennas that were installed from the lighthouse roof to the bedrock. And previous to expeditions, they actually installed some kind of nails in the bedrock, so that made it easy. In a couple hours, we installed a few of these slopers, and I have to say I was absolutely impressed by how efficient just antenna wires could be. While operating, sometimes I felt that I'm using a beam with multiple elements on 20 meters or 18 meters and so forth. It obviously a dipole installed on at a certain height and surrounded by salt water and with no noise, because there's nothing to produce noise like in the cities. The noise floor being so low, we really enjoyed the good pileups with even for the weak stations from Asia and North America. So quite a joy to just operate HF. We were 7 operators, and during my visit to Market Reef, it was the middle of the summer, and a lot of people took vacations, so they rotated their stay on the island. I was the only one that stayed for the whole duration of the expedition for about 10 days. We actually had to leave a day early because the weather was getting really bad, and the boat captain said that we either leave a day early or we stay 3 or 4 days extra, which was not convenient because of all the flight tickets and the travel arrangements that we already done. I had a lot of fun with everyone in the team. Very good operators. A lot of these people are engineers working for, working in the past for either IBM or Nokia or um, my friend Nico actually works for a company that makes robots for a firm that uh, makes explosives. So quite an interesting stories about his work. Well, if you worked us from Market Reef, this is the QSL card. Was quite an exciting time for me. And if you worked us, you definitely got the card if you requested it. It has the story of a little bit of a story of our team there and a description of each of the teammates. It was quite a bit of time, quite a bit of enjoyment for me. The statistics are quite interesting in a sense that our focus was not to make a lot of QSOs. We had almost a little bit over 13,000 QSOs, not a lot by today's standards, but our focus was 6 meter. We had almost 2,000 QSOs, and that made us achieve our goal of putting quite a bit of QSOs in 6 meters in our logs. Well, a bit of a thanks to Marty OH2BH that he because he was behind organizing the logistics of this the expedition, and from my personal point of view, he was the operator behind the expedition Zulu Alpha 1 Alpha, and that was my first DX station that I ever worked. I have quite a bit of a story about that. But I guess I'll leave it for some other time. So I worked him in 1991, and I was so excited, and I was definitely hooked up on DX. And that's the day when I realized that this is going to DXpeditions was definitely something worthwhile doing. Of course, like takes over, and it took a while until I started joining the first DXpedition. Well, of course, I thank all the teammates and the operators that made my life enjoyable while I was in Finland, and also to the Japanese operators that contributed to helping the expedition happen, and also to the two Finnish operators, Juha and Kari, which are our pilots for the 6 meter um, operating. After operating on Market Reef, I moved on to the IARU contest. I was invited as a guest to be part of the Oscar Fox Zero Hotel Charlie, I'm sorry, Hotel Queen station, which operated from Åland Islands. This is a contest station with impressive towers, and obviously, again, an impressive propagation. Åland Islands, in particular Brando Island, which is part of the bigger archipelago of Åland Islands. That an island, a small island surrounded by salt water and big towers, antenna towers, made operating from there really, really exciting. We were a team of 3 people, and we operated exclusively on 40-meter CW. Of course, during the day we worked mostly Europe, but during the nights we had the ability to have a shoot in 3 different directions with the 3 towers, one turned to North America, and one towards Asia, and the third one towards Europe. So you had constantly stations to work. It was quite an exciting time. From there, I moved on and I operated from Radio Arcala, one of the most amazing stations on Earth. By many accounts, Radio Arcala is the largest ham station in the world. The call sign for Radio Arcala is Oscar Hotel 8 X-ray. But while there for a few days at the station, I operated as Oscar Hotel 0 Sierra Charlie Alpha /8. To get there at the Radio Arcala, I had to drive quite a bit through the Finnish landscape, and for miles and miles and miles, you would see just pine trees and those incredible fields of pink flowers depicted there at the bottom left. I also visited the Santa Claus town. An interesting thing to or some touristy thing to do before I reached Radio Arcala. I also enjoyed some interesting Finnish delicatessen. Pictured there at the bottom right is some kind of bear soup. Has some kind of some name, but I can't pronounce it, and probably forgot it 5 minutes after I was told what it is. An interesting cuisine, I should say, but not something you would want to try as your daily meals. You know, when you speak about Radio Arcala, you speak in superlatives. It's a station that's very large. It's the land is about 40 acres, so it's almost like a small village. It's about 25 miles from Oulu, which is the research center for Nokia, which means quite a bit of Nokia engineers are that are ham operators and participated in building this immense station. When I set my mind to visit the and operate from Radio Arcala, I wanted to be able to see the 160-meter tower depicted there at the bottom left. Unfortunately, that was destroyed by a storm. It collapsed completely in December 2013, and it was probably the largest ham radio antenna in the world, beamed for 100 meters. That's quite an impressive sight. I didn't get the chance to see that, but I still enjoy talking about it and looking at the pictures. That tower, I was told, would take about 120 gallons of paint to build, to paint, and it was similar like the Eiffel Tower in Paris, where they would start painting the tower, and by the time they finish, they would have to start again. So all overall, that quite interesting setup with the Yaesu FD5000 radios and OEM amplifiers. Currently, the station is operated remotely in a SO2R configuration, and it often can be heard in most of the contests. The map in the middle shows you, gives you an idea of all these places that I just talked about and their location. At the bottom there, you'll see Market Reef and then Åland Islands. And then I operate also from mainland Finland, close to Helsinki, from the Oscar Hotel 0 Bravo Hotel Martis QTH. And you see there up north, very close to the Arctic Circle, it's the Radio Arcala station. After my visit to Finland, I came home and I realized that I made almost 20,000 QSOs, and that needed a QSL card to celebrate my almost 2 months of ham radio operating in Finland. I operated with different call signs, and this is a picture of the 4-page QSL card that actually just finished printing a couple of weeks ago, and I should start sending the QSL cards probably in the next couple of weeks. Well, whenever I talk about the DXpeditions, everybody is asking, well, what do you go next? And although this year I'll probably have a few DXpeditions in mind, the main ones that I would like to mention are the Swains Island in 2020. Swains Island 2020, which will probably take place in spring 2023, meaning this sometime more or less this time next year. You will have the call sign Whiskey 8 Sierra. It's Swains Island is pretty rare, number 30 in the club log, and it's a small little atoll located in Oceania, very close to American Samoa. It will be a 10 member the expedition, four from Germany, four from Holland, and two from the United States. I think Steve Alpha Golf 4 Whiskey is actually attending this this presentation. I'm looking forward to having some good time with him next year in Swains Island, battling the big mosquitoes and the excruciating heat. It's not too far. It's only 12 hours by boat from American Samoa. All in all, it'll probably take us about 2 days to get there, considering the long flights and so forth. We'll have 4 stations and 2 separate camps that will operate um, all modes, CW, SSB, FT8, and READY. Like I said, this will be happening in spring 2023, and the website is listed there in case you have additional questions. The big one for me is Bouvet Island. This the expedition of the call sign 3 Yankee 0 Juliet has been in the works for almost 3 years. The 3 Norwegian team leaders have been working on this for quite a bit. It will be the expedition with 13 operators. There'll be 4 from Norway, quite a few from North America, and Axel from Germany. It will be a long trip, a 45-day DXpedition, the longest one I've been to. It's an incredible, rare, and difficult to get to DX entity. The only DX entity that's more rare than Bouvet Island is North Korea, but that one is rare for different reasons. Bouvet is very rare because it's very difficult to reach. No other DX entity is more difficult to reach than Bouvet Island. Because Bouvet is located far away from the shipping lanes. It's located at the in the area of the South Atlantic Ocean that's hard to reach and very difficult to weather even during the middle of the Southern Hemisphere summer. So a lot of work and logistics is going to the expedition. It will start on January 6, 2023. That's when we depart from Falkland Islands. We also have the ability to leave from Ushuaia if for whatever reasons Falkland Islands is not open. And we would love to leave from Falkland Islands because that will save us 2 to 3 days of the journey. It will take us about 10 to 15 days to reach Bouvet Island. Once we get to Bouvet Island, we will be staying there for at least 20 days. That's what's written in the contract with the boat. And after that, we'll be departing from Bouvet Island and going towards our final destination in Cape Town, South Africa. It will take us another 10 to 15 days to get there. The reason we live from South America and we end up in Cape Town is because in that part of the world, the wind always blows from west to east, pushing our boat. So we'll take advantage of that to push our boat that's going to take us to this 45-day journey. We are planning to have 12 stations. Our focus is human modes, which means CW and SSB. We'll do some READY as well. And A stations will be dedicated for that. We will be trying some kind of SO2R configuration where the operator is sitting at those 8 stations doing CW or SSB. We'll also have the ability to do in parallel FT8 from the 4 dedicated FT8 stations. This way, our goal is to reach a very high number of QSOs, a minimum of 200,000. so that we get into our logs a number as big as possible of old-time new ones. We've got a lot of support from a lot of clubs and operators around the world. Large organizations like NCDXF and Index have supported us incredibly. These type of DXpeditions cannot happen unless support from the all-white community takes place, because our budget is about $690,000, and we already were able to raise about $550,000. Most of this money, $550,000, goes to pay for the boat that takes us to Bouvet. So our budget for anything else but the boat is very, very small. The team getting ready for the expedition will be meeting in Oslo at the end of April, where the staging ground will be taking place. All the equipment, antennas, and everything will be installed, tested, labeled, and packed in the container that will leave Norway for the long journey to South America. And so at the end of April, a lot of unknown will be resolved when it comes to the equipment. We'll want to take out all the bugs and make sure everything works correctly. We'll be doing rehearsal for emergency procedures and also for installing emergency shelters and tents and so forth. It's Bouvet. It's not as unlike any other DXpedition I've been to. It's a place where there are almost 300 storms a year. So the chances are for us, while we're on the island for about 20 days, that we'll be encountering some kind of a storm that could reach close to 100 miles an hour winds. And so the equipment that we have cannot be off the shelf. It has to be strong aluminum that are being used for the beams and so forth. We'll have about 12 different antennas and beams pointing to different continents at the same time, allowing us to work all the continents in the same time when there are openings. Well, this is it. I am open for questions. I hope you guys enjoyed my presentation. When you do these kind of DXpeditions, there are a lot of details and interesting facts. I try to compress everything in a 50 minutes presentation. So whatever questions you guys might have, I'm open to answer. So go ahead.
Brilliant. Thank you, Adrian. That was really good. Let me just take that off so we can see the gallery. Yeah, thank you, Adrian. That was a riveting presentation. Thank you. I think really, really engrossing. Loved every bit of it. And I have to say, as someone who's worked Market Reef a few times, I never realized how small that island was. Absolutely tiny. Really took me back to see how little space there was there.
Yeah, that drone video really gives a nice perspective of how tiny the island is.
Yeah. Okay, who wants to go first with a question or comment to Adrian? Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, thank you very much for this very interesting talk and these very impressive pictures, Adrian. That was really awesome. I would like to ask a question about your transport to Bouvet. Is it which kind of vessel is it? Is it the Braveheart, for example? Could that be?
No, unfortunately, Braveheart, which would have been our best option, we had that initially. Unfortunately, Braveheart, from what I heard, the company was bankrupt and the vessel got sold for scrap metal. So that boat, unfortunately, is not available for ham operators. So the Norwegian team leaders search for another boat. We're going to be using a sailboat, a very large sailboat, 100 feet in length. It's an oceanic catch. Pictures of it are listed on our website at 3yankee0juliet.com. This boat is and its captain is specialized in Antarctic and Arctic, basically cold weather expeditions. Actually, at this moment, while we speak, the boat is in is taking an expedition to Antarctica, and is expected to return shortly. And I think at the middle of April, the boat will be in Brazil, where one of our team members will be going to inspect the boat and get all the details that we need to properly pack and prepare the boat for the journey from South America to Bouvet.
Thank you very much for this information.
Yeah, the boat is run by a French captain. The boat is also French. Its name is Marama, and the captain of the boat is also the owner, which is quite a good thing, because this way, if decisions need to be made while during the journey, the captain is able to take the decisions right away, not having to wait for the owner of the boat to approve certain itinerary changes or whatever other changes might be needed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Who else has got a question to Adrian? Yes, Richard, RBG. You're on mute, Richard. You need to unmute. Richard, you need to unmute. Let's get him to unmute.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks very much indeed. That was really interesting. That is my invitation to Spratley back in 2015. And unfortunately, it never went ahead. So I know how excited you must be to be going on it. I didn't tell anybody here what the cost was going to be. I think it was going to be about £7,000
for Spratley.
Yeah, and I said to my wife, "What shall I do?" She said, "Go on. It's only a one time to do that." And just before we were due to go, it was called off. So I was really, really disappointed.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be in Spratley with the 9 Monkeys 0 whiskey DXpedition. I spent about 10 days over there, and quite an exciting place to be operating from, although that area in the China Sea is very disputed, let's say, and that makes it very hard to go on the island with the transmission equipment and convince people there that you actually do this for fun and you're not some kind of a agent of some country trying to do some, things not related to ham radio.
Yeah.
But yeah, the expeditions are very expensive. Actually, Bouvet Island is probably the most, it is the most expensive DXpedition I'm gonna go to, and probably I'll be ever going to. This is each operator pays $20,000, and of course I had to have the same discussion with my wife like you did.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I wasn't even sure that if we went, I'd have ever got back. that might have been the attraction. I don't know. I think we were going via Borneo, so I think that was the biggest. I think that was the biggest worry.
Yes, actually, yeah, that's the easiest way to get to Spratley, through Borneo, and that's how we went. Because any other way, it's very difficult. Actually, I think in the 70s, I think before I was born, there was an incident of, I think it was Baldur, that went during the Spratley Islands, and one of the teammates was shot and killed by some Filipino soldiers. So obviously, this is not an area that's easy to visit as a ham operators, and that's why probably Scarborough Reef not going to be active anytime soon, unfortunately.
Yeah, when people say, what are you having for lunch? It might have been M0 or RBG.
Yes.
Thanks very much indeed. That was really good.
Glad you
Thank you,
enjoyed it.
Rich. Thank you, Richard. Right, anyone else? Yes, Steve, AG4W.
And just a quick comment. I encourage, your club to donate to these expeditions, both Swains or Bouvet. The club I'm part of, North Alabama DX Club, is donated generously to both. I think, as Adrian is mentioned, obviously it's very expensive. He and I have also had to suck it up. We were ready to go to Swains. It really got down. Everything was packed. We were all ready to go, and damned if COVID didn't throw a real monkey wrench in the thing. And it's been really kind of really disturbing that it's taken this long to really get DXpeditions going again. And there is a lot of risk, as you can imagine, even for the ones now. You don't know what's going to happen with COVID in the future. And I can absolutely tell you that these guys that go on these things, if they get canceled, there's still money that gets spent and things that happen. And you are heavily invested in it.
That's correct, Steve. So basically, if a DXpedition fails, the money that has been spent is mostly the money that the operators paid from their own pockets.
Yeah.
If any money is returned, is the money that people donated. So, why is that? Like in the case of, let's say, the Bouvet Island, the expedition that's being prepared, a lot of money has been spent on equipment and, on the container, on the insurance, on a lot of items that go into this. Preparing for one of these expeditions, especially to the very rare places, sometimes it feels like it's a full-time job. It's a constant work of in the logistics, because the logistics are very complex. You're dealing with different countries, different laws. You're dealing with the unexpected. You have to plan for the backup, the first backup, the second backup, the third backup. What if this happens? What if that happens? So to take into account all these unknowns, including the one that hit us last year, 2 years ago, which is COVID, it really takes a toll financially and time-wise on the operators.
Yeah, the details that a lot of people don't really understand are some of the finer points. Everybody's used to getting the real time or near real time. I've talked to you, and being in club log, that requires some type of satellite link. You got to have some way of taking care of people medically. If you're going to be out on Bouvet for that long a time, the chances of somebody having some kind of issue is there. It's really another whole presentation, understanding the logistics of a DXpedition of that magnitude. It's not a trivial thing, and that's again why I encourage people to donate and be generous, because it really is. People, when I was pitching our club for Bouvet, why would you bet on a group that's going to take a sailboat to Bouvet? One of the key things I said is you got guys that have obviously convinced themselves, because they're putting a huge amount of money into this thing. They obviously think that sailboat's really going to get there. Otherwise, they wouldn't be spending that kind of money. It really is fascinating to see the inner working parts of one of these things, and look forward to visiting with you on Swains here in a year.
Likewise.
I wish I could have spent 45 days with you at Bouvet, but that would involve very, very grave difficulties with a wife.
Yeah, it's obviously it's a big effort, not only financially, but getting away from family and work and other things in our lives. 45 days, it's not easy, but it was a dream for me to go to a top 10 one. And although I've been to quite a few DXpeditions, this is a top 10, and it's totally a totally different animal, let's say.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you, Steve, and thanks for that, that response to Adrian. Terry, VFC.
Yeah, thanks ever so much. That very, very interesting. Just a question. I couldn't quite believe it when you said it was a sailboat, but that's just been confirmed. Are you doing the sailboat from America, wait at Bouvet, and then go on the sailboat to Cape Town?
Sorry, what was the question?
Are you planning to take the sailboat from America down to Bouvet and then on to Cape Town, or is there a second boat in the offing?
No, it's I mean, it's a sailboat in the sense that it has sails, but it's a yacht, a ketch. It's a quite large boat, you know, in the sense that there will be 20 people in this sailboat. So it's not a sailboat that's a small, you know, sailboat that people use for their entertainment in the weekend.
No.
It's still a sailboat because it uses it does have an engine and does have sails, and actually is to our advantage because the amount of fuel that's going to be used is a lot less than a regular boat, making it cheaper for us to hire this kind of boat. And indeed, we're going to be leaving from South America, sailing to Bouvet, and the same boat going from Bouvet to Cape Town, always having the wind behind us. And like I said, this boat, and you know, I encourage you to take a look at our website, 3yankee0julia.com. There are pictures of the sailboat in the Arctic. So like I said, for the past 12 years, the boat has been doing just that, basically sailing the cold weather continents. So I'm not denying that it's going to be a tough ride, but it's not a sailboat like you know, small little sailboat that people would use during the weekend to have a little bit of fun.
Thank you. And just confirm, it does stand off the island waiting for you all the time, yes?
Yes, you know, in order to obtain the landing permit on Bouvet, the Norwegian Polar Institute that manages the island makes you, by contract, sign certain things, and one of them is the boat that brings you there has to wait for you on the island, or obviously in the vicinity of the island, cannot just drop you off and come back later on. So that's one of the contract requirements from the Norwegian government for us to be able to set foot on Bouvet.
Thank you very much. Very good. Good luck too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Terry. Darren, I think you had your hand up.
Oh, yes. Partly the questions have been answered, but I just wonder, for the likes of Market Reef, what sort of financial investment involved in that? Because that seems a lot more achievable to the average person than Bouvet Island. And regarding Bouvet Island, you're saying it's a small, not a small vessel. Anything less than 110,000 tons is a small vessel, in my opinion. But just be interested in the Market Reef, because it does sound reasonably achievable for the average ham.
Yes, that's correct. Like I mentioned, there are already 20 active call signs for Market Reef. People will go there for a week and you know, enjoy the pileups. It's you know, to make a simple calculation. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers. I was a guest invited there, so but basically, you fly to Finland, you drive and take a ferry boat, and then you have to take a charter boat. You could there's a chartered boat that brings tourists there for a couple of hours, but the same boat brings, you know, ham operators. They're the lighthouse society that takes care of the lighthouse interfaces, there's a person that interfaces with the ham operators. So you have to make arrangements up front, and you tell them I'll be there for a week, and they will arrange transport and so forth. To make a simple calculation, staying on Market Reef, food and all that, it's basically the same as staying in a decent hotel on the mainland. So if you calculate, let's say $100 a day, and you want to stay for a week, that's $700. And then maybe the boat, a few $100 there for the charter boat to bring you there. And then your transportation to go to Finland. And then obviously you need your provisions while you're staying on the island. So I would say, a few $1,000s more or less. You could make it on a very short budget, but it's not, it has to be done through the Lighthouse Society, because they will provide the food for you, and you pay them a sum of money, they give you food, and you enjoy the pile-ups.
Do they have a program set up for Lighthouse on the air?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, not the Lighthouse Society. It's the ham operators that have the Lighthouse on the air. So obviously, if you're there that weekend, when it's the Lighthouse on the air weekend, if you're there, you're definitely popular because you're a rare one. I forgot which weekend is that, but I think it's in the summer, so that's doable. It's almost impossible to get there outside the summer month, because it's very cold and it's hard to arrange transportation, and I don't think the Lighthouse Society will do that for you.
Thank you. Excellent evening. Thank you very much.
Glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you, Darren. Right, anyone else with a question or comment? Yes, George, URB.
Thank you very much, Adrian, for a very interesting talk. I've never worked Market Reef, but I spent about 7 months living in Finland 25 years ago. And I did briefly visit the Åland Islands as well. And I also traveled north towards the Arctic Circle at the time. And I have to say, you showed some photographs, and the landscape is absolutely stunning. It's all this very remote landscape, just trees and straight road through the forest for hours. So yeah, really enjoyed that. I have a quick question on operating. Clearly you're there for a short time and you want to make the most of it. Do you operate 24 hours a day, or do you stop when the bands close? Because I think you work 20 meters upwards or something. Is that right?
On Market Reef, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, propagation is always open in some kind of band.
Okay.
So,
yes.
So the idea when you go on a DXpedition, you decide for a schedule and a number of shifts, and you say, okay, we'll have 4-hour shifts or 6-hour shifts. So you operate your 4 hours, then you relax for another 4 hours, let's say, and then you operate again. And there's always propagation as some kind of band. And when you were that far north, especially during the summer, it's light all the time, which means that your 20 meters is open almost 24 hours. So if you really want to do operate, you can operate non-stop. It all matters of your how long you can stay awake and can focus or decode his CW. But if 20 closes, you open 30 meters, and if 30 meters closes, you open, you play on 40 meters. When you're surrounded by salt water, like a simple dipole, it's just amazing. I mean, I would hear stations in New Zealand or Australia or Japan, and at the first time when you hear them, you feel like, nah, this can't be. Oh, it can't be. VK didn't get it right. You listen, you see 5 of them calling here and say, oh, okay, it's really VK. So I guess the Market Reef is pretty popular there in the summer. I saw a lot of tourists, ham operators going there, enjoying it even for a few days. You just have to coordinate with the boats going there.
Yeah, thanks very much. That was my actually answered my other question as well. Did you have a strict rota that you had to stick to? And but it sounds like you did.
Well, when you're there for 10 days, let's say, at the beginning, people keep to their shifts, but then later on, people say, "Oh, you want to operate? Okay, go ahead. You can operate for my shift." And then, you can sit there so there's never a problem of that. It's just, you being able to stay awake. That's where the issue is.
Thank you very much. Very, very brief additional question. Why does the boat have to wait around Bouvet Island? Is it to ensure everybody gets taken off the island at the end, or they don't just go off and leave you there, or why is that?
For safety reasons. So basically, if let's say there's a big storm coming, you look at the weather, the boat looks at the weather report and says, in 12 hours, we're going to get a really, really, really big storm. We should evacuate the island. Well, in that case, the boat has to be in the vicinity of the island, ready to take the operators. Or it could be the other way around, where, like it happened while I was in Market Reef, where the boat captain said, "No problem if you want to stay on the island, but you either leave in the next 8 hours, or you stay for a few more days." So yeah, usually that's part of the contract, where it tells, for safety reasons. So that's the main reason for that. Plus, another reason is that if the weather permits and it's not, it's feasible, the boat has the ability to cook fresh food, or I should say hot meals. We're not planning to once we get off the boat and stay on the island, we're planning to sit on the island until we leave. But if the weather permits, the cook on the boat might bring us some nicely cooked meals. So it's good for the boat. Also, the way you plan it, you could have spare parts or extra antennas on the boat. And you say, if something happens or some equipment breaks and the boat is in vicinity, we can bring that extra equipment on the island if needed. So the boat has to stay around.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Brilliant. Thank you, George. Who else has got a question or a comment to Adrian? Anyone else want to raise anything with him? Yeah, Terry again. Go on.
Unmute. Yes, you talk about storm warning from the boat, and how likely is it that you'll bring all the equipment back with you, more or less intact?
Well, another speculation in the contract or the approval is from the Norwegian government is that absolutely nothing could be left on the island. We even have to take the nails out of the rock when we leave, which means that even the portable toilet and its refuse has to be brought back to the boat and disposed of outside the island. So we can't leave anything there. Now we will have a lot of storms, and we're not a lot of storms, but we'll probably have stormy weather, and we are preparing for that, meaning each antenna will have a backup antenna, which is being quickly installed to take over if one of the antennas is broken. And while the broken antenna is being fixed, because we have spare parts in our planning, the backup antenna, which has, it needs to be, basically we're planning to be on the air constantly, so that while we're on the island, we can maximize the amount of QSOs that we're making. So obviously stuff will break. It breaks even if you go, to the expedition to a close by entity. Stuff breaks. It's equipment, is whatever. But then our biggest enemy on Bouvet is wind. When the wind reaches 100 miles an hour, you basically can expect that things will break. We're constantly watching the weather on Bouvet, and this year, for example, during the period that we've been to, there was nothing out of the ordinary. Plenty of wind, but nothing too bad. There's an app that you can see and the temperatures from the weather station on Bouvet, publishes daily figures for temperature and wind. So we're not expecting, we're going to be there exactly in the middle of the southern hemisphere summer, which means a minimum of bad weather. But we are preparing for that. We have emergency drills that we're working on. We have emergency procedures. We have ways to fix our equipment, backup for backups, and so forth. Like I said, this is not something that you organize, you know, a few weeks before leaving. You know, the team leaders have started working on these backup plans and emergency procedures about 3 years ago. So a lot of work goes into these type of DXpeditions in order for them to be on the air.
Okay, thank you very much. Nothing amateur about it, is there?
No, no way. We even one of the on our crew, we have hired a consultant, which is specialized on getting scientific DXpeditions to rough Arctic areas, and this consultant is in charge of writing down the procedures for us to land on the island, procedures for safety, procedures for you know, different plans of exiting the island in case something happens, procedures for medical, dealing with medical issues. As a matter of fact, the team has not one but two different doctors as part of the team. They are ham operators, and you could see more details on our website.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you very much. Sorry, yeah, Gerald.
Yeah, hi there. Terrific talk. Thank you, Adrian. It's really good. But one thing, I wonder if you have any special sort of arrangements where you listen out for QRP stations and mobiles. I was lucky to get Christmas Island once, mobile running 10 watts. So I was amazed that I got through okay. But he said, well, every now and again I take a listen just to see if there's anyone out with low power. Is there a standard procedure or anything like that involved?
Well, sorry you didn't get Christmas Island, and I've been there and I know why is it tough. But because the part where you set up camp on where the place where on Christmas Island where most operators are going is a place that's comfortable and good for antennas, but unfortunately it's right up behind a large mountain. So that makes it pretty tough. But to answer your question about that, the way it works with the large DXpeditions, usually in the first few days, you know, you have the crazy pileups, and all the large stations are the ones that are the usual winners because they have a powerful station. But in my opinion, and from my experience, a good operator does not necessarily need a big station to win. It's not about rough power that puts you on a log. It's your ability as a good operator to actually find the pattern of the expedition operator and follow that pattern, and at a certain point in time getting in at the right time and the right being in sync, then you get more chances to get on the log. Now we're going to be there for about 3 weeks, a little bit over 3 weeks, which means that beginning with the second week, the operators that want to work us and have limited resources, you know, maybe a small antenna in the attic, or you know, limited power or whatever, their chances increases as it goes towards the end of the expedition. And there will be days when the operators of the expedition specifically asks for all-time nuance. So basically, if you haven't worked us, today is your day, meaning now you remove people that just want to work you for a new band or a new slot or whatever, and you give more chances to the people that have limited equipment and power and antennas. So usually, statistically speaking, smaller stations get to work large DXpeditions towards the end of the expedition. See, when we wrote the contract for Bouvet, we realized that going there for a week or 10 days is not going to cut it. First of all, the expense to get there is so huge that it's hard to justify cost-wise. But now, because we'll be there for such a long time, we increase the chances for the smaller station to work us. In addition, keep in mind that we'll be running full power, which for Norway is limited, I think, to 700 watts, but we have a special permission from the Norwegian government to use 1.5 kilowatts. So we have amps for that type of power, and we have very large beams pointing to the three different continents at the same time, which obviously increases the likelihood of working a large number of stations. In addition, you have the pileups in FT8. I don't know if you're an FT8 operator, but that also gives you with a little bit of power. It gives you the ability to work us, even if it's just one contact. It's better than nothing. If you prefer CW, then that's okay as well. But with 12 stations running in parallel and 12 different antennas, out of which 6 are large beams at the height of 10-meter masts right next to the cliff, next to the ocean, with no local noise, it's very likely that we will hear very weak station, including QRPs.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And good luck, I guess.
I'll be watching out for you.
Of course.
Brilliant, lovely. Thank you very much, Gerald. Adrian, before you disappear, and I did mention it when we were chatting earlier, but spaceweather.com, and I'll just put it up on the screen, have produced let me just get it into the screen so everyone can see it, a very, very interesting report suggesting that solar cycle 24 has now died, and on the basis of their observations are now predicting, and so if you look at the graph there, the blue bit from 2020 through to 2030 was the original prediction panel on solar cycle 25. The new one, based on the paper in solar physics, that there was a termination event in December December 21, is now predicting that we're going to have this new cycle considerably better. So they're talking about, if you read the whole paper, and I suggest people interested in DX and our modest stations here, most of us have got, that rely on sunspots. They're now predicting that the amplitude of this solar cycle is going to be something like 190 plus or minus 20 sunspots, which is a huge number in comparison to anything we've seen in the last at least 10 years. So you're looking at those 2 expeditions in 2023 now, really coming to the beginning to reach the top end of the sunspots, which for me is very, very exciting.
Yes.
And I guess for you as an operator on the other end of it, you know, to be there when we've got potential for 10 meters, for example, which is a fantastic band for modest stations to make contacts throughout the world, is just a marvelous opportunity. So we'll be following that with great interest, I think, Adrian.
Yeah, that's correct. As we move on closer to the peak of the cycle 25, it increases our chances for a better propagation. We already see today propagation a lot better than the same time last year or the 2 years ago. So it's only going to get better from here until it reaches the peak in 2025, 26. So at the beginning of 2023, during the winter in Europe, chances to work European stations are pretty good. Like you said, the 10-meter will open significantly, and when 10-meter opens, it really opens. It you know, you only, like you said, you only need 10-15 watts and you can circle the globe, and that's nice. It's to our advantage, and we're very happy about it. It will definitely help us reach our goal of a minimum of 200,000 QSOs.
Before Adrian goes, Ken, I saw you nodding when Adrian was making the point about operating next to the sea and working VKZL. Just quickly, just talk about your station and your experience, Ken.
Yeah, well, good evening, Adrian. Just to enlighten you, I do a lot of work down in Spain, vertically polarized at the side of the salt lagoons. And when Nick said it, I smiled. I knew exactly what you were going to say. And it's just phenomenal. Firstly, you get the noise floor is so low. You must notice this. And the signal to noise ratio is fantastic. And you just get enhanced not enhanced propagation. You think you have, but the salt water just acts as an amplifier. I work with quarter wave verticals, so we're talking 16.5 feet on 20 meters, and I'm working VKs and ZLs and the Pacific as if they're European stations. That's my experience of it. But when you said it, straight away, I just thought, I know what he's going to say here. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, that's true. It's that feeling is just incredible, because I thought, you know, obviously the operators that I was there, the Finnish operators that were there with me on the island, they knew about what a simple sloper antenna, basically a wire, can do. I was a bit skeptical. I thought those antennas are there just so that I don't get bored while waiting for 6 meters to open. And then the first, you know, like an hour after we put the first sloper and I was giving it a test, I couldn't believe it. You know, I was like, wow. It's, you know, when you have no noise and you hear so many stations, you hear a VK on top of Delta Lima or something like that, you're like, you can't believe it. It's like you're thinking that it's something wrong with your ears.
I was on not yesterday, day before, I think, and when I worked into the Pacific, and there were two friends, they were talking in French, and I listened to them for a minute or two, and I realized that one of them was Foxtrot Kilowatt 8, and no one else was hearing them, and I just put one call straight to the guy as he finished the QSO and picked me up like that, easily done. And that was on 17, so that's an even smaller piece of wire. Yeah, it's fantastic. If anyone lives near the sea, go to the sea to play radio.
And Adrian, and I think Ken, you're never using more than 50 or 70 watts, are you?
Yeah, usually about between 50 and 100 watts, but nearly always 75 watts.
The salt water does the rest.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Right, before we say goodnight to Adrian, anyone else with a final comment or question to Adrian? If not, can we show our appreciation, guys, to Adrian in the normal way? Thank you, Adrian. That was really good.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here tonight with you guys. And looking forward to be here again, maybe with after one of the next DXpeditions happen.
Yeah, we'll all be looking out now for the Swain Island and obviously Bouvet. We'll all be looking out. So Adrian, it was fantastic. It was a really entertaining evening, and I loved the detail, the description of Market Reef. That was great. Okay, well. I'm going to stop the recording. So thanks, everyone.
Can you go again with me?